On Monday, July 20th, 2026, on channel GlobalETs, channel that has been created in 2025. I am Jean Librero. It is the 8th interview I will be conducted on this channel. Previous guests were Philip Mantle from UK, Paul Asco, another author from UK, Paul Blake-Smith, American researcher and author, Preston Dennett, Tom Carey, iconic author, co-author of Witness to Roswell, Patricia Buselm from Chile, who carried out a breathtaking investigation into the Caporal Valdez UFO abduction case in 1977 in Chile. 2 weeks ago, on July 7th, I was proud to interview Dr. Irena Scott, another famed researcher, one leading specialist on the famous Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. And today, welcoming Mrs. Kathleen MARDEN, a very famed author. Hello, Kathleen. How are you?
Hello. I'm doing great, and it's so nice to be back with you again.
Okay. Kathleen, I have to remind the person who don't know this channel and who don't know you much in France, and even those who know you, that actually I am proud to say that I took part in a first interview with you on a French YouTube channel. It was in 2019. It is called UFO Conscience. The channel is still on with the same host, which is with Olivier de Sedona. The channel is called UFO Conscience, and it was a long interview which you allow to the channel. Olivier had got into contact with you, and you agreed to this interview, and he asked me to translate because I had done that several times for his channel, and it was a beautiful moment we had with you. Kathleen, thank you again for that. Thank you very much, because it was long and many things you share to the French people. So, and this interview is not available free, because now the channel UFO Conscience is available to subscribers. A few interviews are free, but most are to subscribers. So I tell everyone who wants to listen to Kathleen MARDEN in French from 2019 to subscribe to UFO Conscience, to my friend Olivier de Sedona's channel. So thank you again for that, Kathleen. So,
My pleasure.
so welcoming you today. You agreed to an interview, a new portrait of you as an investigator, as an author. People who know little about you know that you are Batty and Barney Hill's niece. Your mommy was Batty's sister, and you witnessed the event from the beginning. You were a teenager at the time, so we'll listen to you in a moment. And I'll ask you for this interview, in order to introduce a book by you that I got translated in 2023, in May 2023, a book you authored in August 2019, Extraterrestrial Contact, What to Do When You Think You Have Been Abducted.
Yes. Would you like me to speak about that?
Okay, wait a second. What can we start with? Do you want to recall first the event, maybe the 1961 event, and then I'll give a description of your biography and your books, but a word
Sure.
on the 1961, September 19th, 1961, New Hampshire.
Yes. My aunt and uncle, Betty and Barney Hill, were traveling home from a wonderful vacation through Canada when suddenly an unidentified craft swooped down over their vehicle. It had been following them for some time, but now it just swooped down over the highway about 200 feet above them. And then my uncle got out of the car to look at this craft through binoculars. And this is all part of the conscious recall. It's all in the documented archival record to the Air Force and to the National Investigations Committee on Aerial Phenomena. This is a photograph, not a photograph, but the last one, the sketch. That's it. The sketch is what Barney drew when he arrived home. He had lost time after he observed this vehicle, and after a series of code-like buzzing sounds struck the trunk of his car. He said that they sounded like someone had dropped a tuning fork. And suddenly he and Batty felt this tingling sensation in their bodies, a vibration in their vehicle. Batty wondered if she would receive an electric shock. She put her hand on the metal, but was not shocked. As if only a moment had passed, they found themselves in an entirely new location, 35 miles down the highway. And they had full memory of everything that had happened before the buzzing sounds and everything that remembered after the buzzing sounds. This was a second series of buzzing sounds that brought them to full consciousness, but they had vague memories of finding themselves on a dirt road lined with tall trees, of a fiery orb, and of a roadblock. They didn't know where or when it occurred. And it remained a mystery because when they arrived home, there was physical evidence, in addition to the circumstantial evidence that they felt contaminated. They felt what they said was clammy, much dirtier than if they had actually been on a trip and returned home driving through the night. And they hadn't intended to drive too late into the night. It would have been 2 to 3 a.m. when they were to arrive home. But now, when they arrived home, it was 2 hours later than they had anticipated. It was 5:16 a.m. So many questions, the physical evidence, the discovery of shiny spots on the trunk of the vehicle that hadn't been there the previous day. A compass needle indicated that there was a magnetic field over those spots. Barney's best dress shoes were so deeply scraped that he had to buy new shoes. Betty's dress was torn in several places. So many mysteries surrounding that event.
Yeah, thank you for recalling the thing that, in the word of the world expert Kathleen MARDEN and family members. So, can you tell us, for instance, what happened on the 20th or 21st when Batty visited your family, your mom, your family, your relatives? Were you there? When did you learn? When did you hear about the event?
I heard about this event when I arrived home from school on the 20th, the same day that they were abducted, actually, in the early morning hours of September 20th. So they went home, they drew sketches of what they remembered, they had a nap, and then Batty called my mother, her sister. I was arriving from home from school in the afternoon, and I heard my mother on the phone, and then she filled me in on what Batty said. And I was curious about that. I talked my father into driving us to Betty's and Barney's house 2 days later, where I heard Batty telling me precisely what had happened that night, while my father sat in the living room as Barney described to him that he had observed figures who were non-human looking down at him. And he was waiting for a second call from the Air Force. He had made a report to the Air Force the day before, And he was talking to my father about this. I also went out with Betty and my mother and my two brothers and looked at the shiny spots on the trunk of the vehicle. Betty's watch had stopped and never ran again, incidentally.
Excuse me, what did you say?
Betty's watch had stopped
Oh, yes.
and never ran again.
The watch. Okay, so 2 days after the event, you convinced your dad to go to Betty and Barney's home.
Yes, I did.
Okay. It must be a strong emotion for a teenager, for a 14 years old girl, right?
I was highly curious, but I wasn't frightened at that point. I wanted to know more. I was like a girl detective, you might think of it that way. And so I wanted to learn what I could because I had never heard of anything like this before. It wasn't until later that I became terrified.
Yeah, at the time, people were talking about flying saucers since the 40s, but not really on these cases, these kind of cases, right?
That's correct. It's my understanding that there were a few magazine articles in Life magazine, maybe, but I wasn't aware of them, and apparently my family wasn't aware of them either. We were interested in politics. My grandfather was the selectman in the small town of Kingston, New Hampshire. He had been the chairman of the Board of Selectmen for a year. And they were welfare agents for the town of Kingston. They were also farmers. So my life actually revolved around politics, school, the 4-H club, because we lived in a farming community, and that's at my church, that sort of thing. So this was entirely different than anything that I had ever heard about.
Okay, thank you very much. It's a very important, very valuable account for people in France who never heard you talking about that.
Mhm.
Thank you. Do you want to introduce your career, your life history in investigation, in UFO investigation, or your professional activity before that, or can
Yes,
you?
I'd love to. I'd love to.
Okay, we listen to you then.
Well, I have to tell you that there was such a stigma against UFOs in that time frame. I discovered that I decided that I would never speak of my aunt and uncle's experience. I had been sworn to secrecy by them anyway because they never intended to make their experience public. They were willing to speak to military officers, to scientists, to their minister, that sort of thing, to their family, very confidentially, but never had intended for this to go public. In fact, when it did, it pretty much ruined their lives. But I did go to college after high school. I should back up a moment. I was so involved in politics as a teenager that when Betty and Barney were invited to Lyndon Johnson's inauguration for their political activities, I was invited as well.
Oh,
So that was a very exciting time for me as a teenager to do that. I was politically active. I was on the student council of my school. And so,
it was after Kennedy's death, assassination.
yes, it was after President Kennedy's death.
And Lyndon
And
Johnson took over since he was vice president.
he took over, and then he ran for election again. He won, and that's when we were invited. This was in 1965. And my uncle Barney was appointed to the U.S. Commission on Civil Rights, representing the state of New Hampshire. So he was a very important man, and certainly did not want to be known as anyone who was connected to UFOs.
I didn't know that. Thank you.
Yes. So I went on to college. I attended the University of New Hampshire and graduated from the UNH in 1971.
21.
And yes, and then I lived with Batty during part of that time too. After Barney's death in 1969, I moved in with Batty.
Can you say a word about Barney's death, Kathleen? Also, it's maybe very painful to you, but
it was.
It is strange to think that a man 46 years old passed away.
Yes, this was on a day where New Hampshire was experiencing a very large blizzard. And Batty, who was a social worker for the state, was at home. And Barney, who worked for the U.S. Post Office, was at home too. There was too much snow to travel. And they were just downstairs enjoying their time playing a game of pool when all of a sudden there was a flash of light and Barney felt a stinging sensation in his temple. He then began to feel dizzy and nauseated. He made his way up the stairs, crawling at the top of the stairs. And when Batty found him, he was lying on the floor upstairs. She immediately called an ambulance. And Barney had had a massive brain bleed, and he died that day, February 25, 1969. So very tragic day for our family. Barney's funeral was like that. The funeral director for Batty told me, like that of a governor of a state or a high-ranking politician. There were people who flooded the church, people who flooded the funeral home, and Barney was considered a very important man in the state of New Hampshire.
So Batty Hill went on alone, and you lived with her for a time.
I did live with her for a time while I drove Barney's car to the University of New Hampshire, where I completed my studies for my degree. After that, I went to the University of Cincinnati. I had gotten married, and my husband was studying for his doctorate in the philosophy of psychiatry. And I wanted to go to graduate school too. I did part-time while I taught school in Cincinnati. So it was a very important time for me. And of course, during the summers, I and my husband would return to New Hampshire. So I've always been very close to my family. And it was really great to be able to be back to visit with them, not only in the summer, but also during the major holidays.
So Batty too, you would visit Batty as well, of course.
Oh, absolutely. And she would come to visit me sometimes. I was her favorite niece. And I ended up becoming the trustee of her estate. And I set up her archival record at the University of New Hampshire.
I see that the Mine Special Collection Library, University of New Hampshire Library.
Yes, yes, I'm very proud of that special collection. And so I took all of her files and some of my investigation files and put them at the University of New Hampshire. I have more that I'm going to send this year. I'm accumulating 2 archival collections. My personal archive is going to be at the Archives of the Impossible at Rice University. And then my work on Batty and Barney Hill's case will be at the University of New Hampshire.
You mentioned the Rice University?
Yes, in Texas. The Archives of the Impossible. John Mack's files are there, Jacques Vallée, Whitley Strieber, and many important investigators. So I'm very pleased to have had my archives accepted at that university.
Okay. One question, Kathleen, before letting you go on. You mentioned at a certain point, I read it recently, that in writing one new book, you visited the American Philosophical Society in Philadelphia for archives.
I did. There were some very important archives at the American Philosophical Society in Philadelphia. I made several trips there, and for a period of days, going through the files of what we think of as the debunkers. Donald Menzel, Dr. Donald Menzel from Harvard University, an astrophysicist who is closely connected to the NSA and the CIA. He had written that he had been involved in naval intelligence for longer than anyone, had his files there, and he worked very closely with the government on the debunking program.
He was part of the Majestic group.
Yes, he's named as being part of Majestic 12, but it's obvious that his work was also in sequence with the CIA-funded Robertson panels in meetings in 1953, where they decided that they were going to debunk UFOs, that they were going to follow and investigate the people who were officers in the UFO groups, and also were going to ridicule important people who claim to have had UFO events.
Yeah.
And Dr. Menzel published his first book on this in 1953, debunking UFOs. So he was on the board of directors at the American Philosophical Society. He had files there. I'm sure that he was the one who approved Philip Klass's files. Philip Klass had a bachelor's degree in electrical engineering, and then he became a writer for Space and Technology magazine. It had been Aviation Weekly, beginning when he began to work for them as a writer, and then he went on to be one of the editors of that magazine. But he and Dr. Menzel had a close association, and I very much enjoyed reading Philip Klass's files and photocopying Philip Klass's files, because it gave me good insight into his debunking work in concert with scientists. Sort of Philip Klass, I think of as the hit guy in all of this, where the scientists were using not investigation, but deductive reasoning to debunk UFOs. So I read letters from Dr. Menzel to Carl Sagan, advising him that he should stop engaging in his activities, UFO-related activities, and to come into step with his older peers, because that would mean that his career would be very fruitful, as was Dr. Menzel's, who was a little bit of a rebel in the beginning of his career. So there was some very interesting information. I read all of UFO abductee Travis Walton's files there. I read what Klass had on Batty and Barney, and that was very, very interesting to read his personal letters and opinions, and how he was portraying my aunt as a kook, a lovable kook, who was absolutely nothing of the kind.
Incredible. Yes, I knew that Philip Klass archives were the American Philosophical Society, and also he was a debunker, like official debunker, supposedly by the CIA or whatever agency. But he had gathered information. Of course, he was using all the information to do a bad job, a dirty job. But for a true investigator as you, it was interesting to get to this information and to analyze how I was using it in a wrong way.
Yes, I could not prove that Class was an employee of the CIA. I do have his FBI file, and there are some CIA records there. But in his FBI file, the FBI didn't have a very high opinion of him or his debunking efforts, which were, for example, Dr. Alan Hynek was described by Class, who wrote a letter to the FBI, a nasty letter ridiculing Alan Hynek. He said that he was the spiritual leader of kooks and cranks who believed in UFOs. And the FBI turned around and said that Alan Hynek was considered to be highly reputable and at the top of his career among his peers, and that Philip Klass had no such sterling reputation. So I was happy to see that.
Good news, good piece of news. FBI had a good insight.
Yes, they did. Yes, they could figure him out. However, also mentioned was the fact that Philip Klass had released unclassified files a couple of times, and he wasn't prosecuted for it, because if the government had prosecuted him, they would have had to reveal this confidential material, this classified information. They didn't want to reveal it. Now, Stanton Friedman, with whom I worked and with whom I wrote 3 books, told me that the FBI, the CIA, in that time frame tended to offer people like Philip Klass the opportunity to redeem themselves by doing work for them. And so this could possibly have been what happened. I have no proof of it, but suddenly Philip Klass in 1966 entered the debunking field. He wrote his first book and began to do his investigations from an authoritative stance.
I think David Jacobs has written about him. I think he met with Philip Klass in a conference, and they were talking nicely. Also, he knew that he was there only to say lies in further article papers, but they talked nicely.
Yes, he and Stanton Friedman used to have dinner together and talk nicely to one another, but Philip Klass stabbed him in the back behind his back.
Yes, David Jacobs knew that. About the, thank you, Kathleen, about the American Philosophical Society in Philadelphia, which you just mentioned, Philip Klass archives, Donald Menzel's archives. So, do you know that David Jacobs donated his own archives and Bud Hopkins archives to the American Philosophical Society?
Yes, I talked to David on the phone. Before he donated them, I was very concerned about the release of names, the identities of experiencers, and I wanted to make sure that they were going to be expunged.
Okay, he talked to me about that. He didn't tell me, because I was talking to him on the phone regularly at the time. He didn't tell me that he talked to you about this, that he talked to you. He didn't tell me.
He didn't tell you?
No, he didn't tell me that he had talked to, maybe he was already with his Alzheimer issue or starting getting losing memory. I don't know. I don't think so, because he was he was okay at the time.
Well, I'm sure he didn't mention every activity in his life.
Course, yeah. Yeah, I may have talked to another person. He didn't think of telling me. He didn't know that I knew you either, I think, or it was just at the same time. But he told me that, yes, he had taken care of expurging the name of witnesses on the transcripts, because he explained to me, don't know if you know that, told me that Bud Hopkins had his tapes, but Bud Hopkins did not do transcripts on his tape. And David Jacobs paid a secretary, a clerk, a woman, to carry out transcripts on all David Jacobs' hypnosis sessions on all his career. And I think he said he paid with his own money, and I think he did that for Bud Hopkins as well. Well, I'm not sure, but in the transcripts, he took care of taking out the names to protect the identity of witnesses, of experiencers. He told me that it took a lot of time, much time, to do all of that before donating to the American Philharmonic.
I'm glad that he did that.
What do you say about this archive? Because recently, I've been thinking all of this. Philip Mantle is donating his archives to David Mahler in New Mexico National Research Center. And there are, as you say, there's Rice University, there's American Philosophical Society. There is something in Wyoming, at the University of Wyoming, too.
Probably Leo Sprinkle's files.
For instance, the author from Frank Scully archives are there at the University of Wyoming. The American American Heritage Center, University of Wyoming. You have several archives there, and the Frank Scully archive are there. So, don't you think there should be created a website, a unified website for all investigators, a digitalization of all these archives in order for any investigator to access all this material?
Well, it's my understanding that Rice University is going to digitize all of the files eventually. It takes a long time. And if other archival collections digitize all of their records as well, they'll be more accessible to the public. But, who knows if they're going to? They depend upon grants to do this.
Yeah. Anyway, David Mahler is doing a big job as well in New Mexico.
Yes, he's been collecting files for many, many years. I visited his collection maybe 10 or 12 years ago. And at that time, he had probably 10 or more 3-level file cabinets filled with archival records. But I understand that it's expanded. It's much, much larger now. It's in a new location, and many researchers, investigators are donating their files to his collection.
Yeah, he puts posts on Facebook regularly or Instagram. Every month there are new investigators who donate. It's impressive. I would love to go to New Mexico. Okay, so Kathleen, so we go on. What about MUFON? How did you get to? What was your career in UFO studies then? How did it get started? And what do you say?
Well, I began with my aunt Batty. I had been a social worker, and then I'd been a teacher. I was an education services coordinator. And then I was so interested about Betty's and Barney's experience that I wanted to learn more. So I wanted to formally investigate what happened to them. So I started through interviews with Batty, through driving along the route in New Hampshire, stopping at the stops that they stopped at, while Batty on audio recordings told me precisely what happened at each spot. So I knew
which year was it, Kathleen? Was it in the 70s, for instance?
When I was doing that part? No, it was in the 80s.
80s, so
it was 80s when I was doing that that
About
thing.
20 years afterwards, after the event. Yeah.
Afterwards, yes. Back in the 60s, I was with Betty and Barney. Sometimes when they went up there, they were looking for the abduction site. I was with them when they found the abduction site.
It took time? Did it take time to find the site?
It did take time. They began their search in either late 1961 or early 1962. Because they couldn't go up there during the winter and look for dirt roads. But finally, on Labor Day weekend, 1965, they found that spot. We had gone camping for the weekend. My mother was there, my grandparents, Betty and Barney, and myself. And we were just driving, still looking for that spot, when Barney recognized the dirt road and drove in and stopped right where that craft had landed. And there was the path in the woods that they had been taken down, and the huge area where the craft had landed. There was no vegetation growing there.
So the site had not been found previously?
No, it hadn't been. It hadn't been, although Betty and Barney had looked for it for a few years.
Because you explain, you remind that we know the basic story, but when they had the 2 hours missing time, they were like 30 miles away from the original sighting experience.
Yes, so 35 miles away from their close
It's a long
encounter.
distance.
Yes, so, they had memories here, but in between, they had very little recall of what had happened.
So
it wasn't until after that hypnosis sessions with Dr. Simon in 1964 that they had better memories of all of those events and where the abduction took place. So it was in 1965 when we finally went up there and found that abduction site.
Must have been a strong emotion to Barney and to Betty.
Absolutely. Yes, it was.
They cried, I imagine.
I don't know I don't remember. I think I remember excitement on Betty's part. Knowing Barney, he was probably relieved to have finally found that spot. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. No one says cry for relief. That's what I mean.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. But I don't think that Barney would cry in front of the family.
What an emotion it must have been for him and for Betty.
Yes, I know that it was. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay. And so about Benjamin Simon, because this hypnotic session is very important. It's basic for the further investigation by yourself and others. But what about it? How did it happen? Because personally, I don't remember that.
Well, Barney was extraordinarily distressed because he had conscious recall of observing non-humans standing at the window of this craft that was hovering only 100 feet above him. And then he had the sensation, this sense of fear that they had a plan, and that plan was to capture him. He pulled the binoculars from his eyes so forcefully that he broke the binocular strap and went running back to the car in a hysterical condition, screaming to Betty that they had to get out of there or they were going to be captured. Yeah. So this really weighed on Barney. Betty had no memory of observing these non-humans, had no memory of feeling that she was going to be captured. It was Barney who had that experience. And he wasn't having any dreams or nightmares about it. He was pushing it down. He was trying to forget about it. He felt that he would be harmed if he ever even spoke of it. But, Betty had a series of 5 dreams that began 10 nights after the experience, and they occurred first thing in the morning, just before she woke up. So she was in a hypnopompic state sort of at that time. And what in that state, you can remember real experiences, but also add fantasy material to that to help to relieve the anxiety that you're feeling. That didn't happen to Barney. And Barney ended up developing bleeding ulcers. He couldn't sleep. He had a high state of anxiety. So he was referred to a psychiatrist locally. And one day he was talking to the psychiatrist about how he and Batty had gone up to the White Mountains looking for that spot. And the psychiatrist thought that this was important. And so the psychiatrist referred him to Dr. Benjamin Simon in Boston, in the Back Bay, who was a renowned psychiatrist because he had developed a new technique of using deep trance hypnosis to overcome psychiatric issues and physiological symptoms that were related to a traumatic experience. He had worked successfully during World War II as the head of the Department of Psychiatry at the Mason General Hospital on Long Island, working with soldiers who were returning with shell shock. And
what we call the post-traumatic symptom syndrome.
Yes,
disease.
That's what we call it now. Yeah, we didn't call it that back after World War II, or even when Barney had his symptoms. So Dr. Simon worked primarily with Barney, who was his patient, but Batty went and asked if she could hypnosis as well to find out if her dreams were real. So Dr. Simon agreed to hypnotize both of them separately and to reinstate amnesia at the end of each session. He did this for two reasons. One, so that they couldn't compare notes when they arrived home. And the other, which Batty and Barney didn't know about prior to hypnosis, was that both of them experienced trauma during their hypnosis sessions. And so they had 4 months of these hypnosis sessions and 2 months of therapy afterward, where they were permitted to sit together and listen to the hypnosis recordings and talk about them with Dr. Simon.
I mean, you mean it was just to protect them regarding the trauma, not to expose them directly to the memory of the trauma?
They were able to listen to the hypnosis tapes, so they heard themselves in hypnosis. But Dr. Simon was a prominent psychiatrist who worked with them through this to help them to overcome their trauma. And he was highly successful in doing that.
Yeah, I mean, in the hypnosis session, he was ordering them to forget the memory. That's what you said a while ago. In order to protect them, in order for them not to face the trauma directly in a violent way, let us say.
That's right. Initially, during the hypnosis.
Yeah.
And that's when Barney started to have dreams, as he was working through these subconscious memories of what had happened. But then in the last 2 months...
Because before, he did not have dreams before. Previously, he did not have
That's
dreams.
correct. He said he hadn't had dreams previously, only during the hypnosis sessions. And he would talk to Dr. Simon about those dreams when he went to visit him the following week. So it's all in all of my information, because as the trustee of the estate, I have all of the collection of hypnosis sessions.
Good. All of that is digitized. Is it private still? Is it confidential still, or will it be accessible to researcher or whatever?
The hypnosis sessions on audio are not available to the public. However, I have transcribed the hypnosis sessions with the Hills, and you will be able to find them at Kathleen-Marden.com.
Okay, great. So Benjamin Simon, it must have been a strong experience to him too, because he was not involved in, let's say, UFO studies as such.
That's true. In fact, he was attempting to find a prosaic explanation for what happened. He was ignoring the physical evidence. He was ignoring their conscious recall, their report to the Air Force, their report to NICAP. He was focusing only on the hypnosis and attempting to convince Batty and Barney that Batty had believed in her dreams and had therefore only retold her dreams under hypnosis, and that Barney had absorbed a little bit of information from her dreams and had confabulated his own story in hypnosis. So as a social scientist, it was interesting to me to transcribe all of those files for comparative analysis to determine whether or not Dr. Simon's hypothesis was supported. And what I discovered was, although I do believe that Batty repeated a lot of the information from her dreams, I'm not positive that that occurred because it was so different than her dreams. The entities she saw who were interacting with her were different from the ones in her dreams. The procedures were different. In her dreams, it was all 1961 technology. In her hypnosis sessions, it was an advanced type of technology, even technology that she didn't have words for. When, for example, when she described the book, it wasn't really a book. It reminds me of what we think of as a tablet today. There was a hard surface. It was very thin. It was kind of large. There was a hard surface when you opened it. And underneath that surface were symbols that she did not recognize. There were 6 rows of these alien symbols. And they are published in my book, Captured, the Batty and Barney Hill UFO Experience with Stanton Friedman.
Yeah. Yeah, tablet, yes. Even technology that we have no idea, probably.
Yes.
Even other. All right. Okay, so we had an insight into the experience of Batty and Barney Hill. So I'm sure the French-speaking people will be happy to hear you in translation. It'll be soon as possible. Okay, so your book, Kathleen, your best-selling book, written with Stanton Friedman, who passed away in 2019, Captured, the Batty and Barney Hill UFO Experience, published in 2007 and published again on the 60th anniversary of the event in 2021. That's right?
That's correct. That's correct.
I had
with updated information, a lot of updated information about scientific evaluation of the evidence that we didn't have initially. But over the years, I've been attempting to attract scientists who could use the latest technology to examine the evidence on Batty's dress and also the star map. So there's new information in my updated version of Capture.
From 2007 to 2021, we get a new scientific evaluation of the evidence.
Yes.
Good. Kathleen, you opened recently a website, BattyBarneyHillUFO.com.
Yes, I did. It's not complete yet, but I decided that I wanted to separate them from my personal page. So I'm in the process of creating a personal page, and then I have come along fairly well on the Batty and Barney Hill page.
So I imagine it took a lot of time since you have so much material. There have been many hours together on a website.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And you have your personal website, KathleenMarDen.com, which is already very substantial.
It is, and that's the one I'm going to be closing, because I'm developing a new website, which I hope is going to be Kathleen-Marden.com, where it will focus primarily on my work. I'll have some information about Batty and Barney, but about my other investigations and the scholarly papers that I have written.
Good. Congratulations, because already it is rich as much on the website.
Yes.
About we're talking about we'll talk a little about your books on alien abduction, but now let's say precisely Stanton Friedman. You co-authored three books with Stanton Friedman.
Yes.
And the first one was UFOs, the UFO cover-up. That's right?
No, the first one was Captured, the Batty and Barney Hill UFO experience.
Oh, yes.
The second one was Science Was Wrong.
2010.
Which is a science book on the history of political involvement in science and the desire of powerful scientists to maintain the zeitgeist of the old guard and dismiss the younger scientists who had made extraordinarily important discoveries, and this political back and forth, and how the younger scientists finally were able to come forward, sometimes after their own deaths. Their information was released because it had been verified. And so that's what that book is about.
Science Was Wrong. And second one, Fact, Fiction, and Flying Saucers, 2016.
That's my third book with Stanton. And that was about the history of government involvement in the investigation of UFOs, their major studies, their findings, their decision to cover up their findings, how the Robertson panel met and made that decision to cover up all of this information, who was involved in the cover-up, and the work that they did to convince the public that all of this was nonsense.
That's a big issue. So it's very important to think of that today. Do you know James Clarkson, Kathleen?
Yes, I know him. I like him.
James Clarkson. When I was reading Witness to Roswell and the other book by Thomas Carey and Donald Schmidt, Inside the Real Area 51, focused on the Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, I found this book by James Clarkson on the bibliography, and I tried to get to this book. I tried to get to him, and it was difficult. It was like in 2015, 16, and finally found him. And recently I had an interview with him, and I asked him about the current declassification disclosure program. Declassification. He told me in blunt words, this will not happen. A true disclosure, let us say, a true ET disclosure, because he told me the law, or the FOAIO law, the Act of Liberty, Freedom of Information Act, does not apply to private companies. And he told me all the technology that have been found in UFO crashes or in whatever ET contact are in hands of company conglomerates or small agency that we don't even know the names, but it's not in the hand of the government. And so these companies don't have to answer to anyone.
That's correct. And they have been behind the cover-up as well, because they are attempting to develop military technology, and they're using, they're back engineering these craft, and they've been doing that for a very long time. But you can't come very close to what their technology is until you have moved ahead. So in your scientific understanding, you've had findings. And finally, I think we're at the point where we are beginning to develop their technology. And but they wouldn't want to tell us, and they certainly wouldn't want to tell our enemies.
Anytime a military are involved, it is a very, very serious issue, very difficult. So thank you for these books. It's a long time, Kathleen, I've not read them. It's a long time I want to read Science is Wrong and the other one too. I've read books by Timothy Good. I read the two books by Richard Dolan, on the national security state, the first and second volume. Very interesting, very relevant, very significant.
It is.
But Richard Dolan pays tribute to your work in some words of appraisal, which we have in extraterrestrial contact, and so I will read that. So he values a lot your investigative work carried out together with Stanton Friedman.
Yes. He started out as my mentor. I knew a lot about alien abduction because of my aunt. She had mentored me on that for years, and I'd done my investigations, and I was writing. I had most of my book written, at least the rough draft, when I asked Stanton to join me. But I asked Stanton to become my mentor on the history of government involvement in the investigation of UFOs, because he was an expert on that. So he didn't give me the answers. I had to do the work to find the answers. And that's very important. It wasn't like he was my teacher giving me all of his information. He was just giving me guidance on where to look.
You were lucky to co-work with him, but he was lucky to find a student.
Well, he mentored a lot of people, I have to tell you. Anyone who asked him, he said yes to. So I was only one of those individuals.
Amazing person. In 1976, he got into contact with a journalist, John Luttrell, who wanted to put an article in the Boston Press on the case. Who was it he met in 76? Because he got involved in the investigation, the Batty and Barney Hill case.
Yes, he did. He wrote to John Luttrell. Now, John Luttrell was a writer for the Boston Traveler in Boston, Massachusetts. And I have a letter that he wrote to Batty and Barney in August of 1965. And he said that he had been discussing their events, their story, with a woman. I'm not going to use her name, but her name is there. And that she had been telling him all about the Hills event and hypnosis tapes. Now, Batty and Barney were furious about this. It was just so unfortunate because they never wanted their story to be made public. And this woman happened to be the wife of a naval officer who was meeting with Batty and Barney. And she was always with him, listening in. And then she spoke to this journalist. And Betty and Barney said, absolutely not to him. You cannot do what you're planning to do. No, this will destroy us. And he went ahead and he did it anyway, behind their back. And he got in touch with officers at Pease Air Force Base, Project Blue Book, investigators who didn't consult with Betty and Barney to see if they were going to release this information. They just talked to him. And he ended up writing 5 articles in the Boston Traveler. Yes, in October of 1965. And this was devastating to our family and to Betty and Barney. I did not like that man at all for years. But recently I was back reviewing his articles, and he did point out that the Air Force sent him the investigation report, but it wasn't the real investigation report. It was hand typed, and they had accidentally dated it 1965 instead of 1961. And they had removed the pertinent information about the erratic flight pattern of the craft, about how it noiselessly ascended and descended, how it was the size of a dinner plate held at arm's length. Keep in mind, and the full moon is the size of an aspirin held at arm's length.
I read that. Yeah,
yes.
Yeah.
Yes, that's important.
Not redacted the original report.
They did. They redacted the original report and put nonsense in. So John Luttrell brought that out in his articles. He also treated Betty and Barney very kindly. He was objective about who they were, how successful they were, that they were credible people. And he also mentioned that he had found 6 witnesses to the craft that night.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Well, in the 1970s, when Stanton Friedman began his investigation, he wrote to John Luttrell and asked him about that. And John wrote back and said that he had found in all at that point 12 to 14 witnesses who were in the same location. Generally, they were not all together. They were dispersed throughout the area. But they were looking at the location where Betty and Barney were observing that craft. And if John drew lines, they all intersected in that location. So that was a very important piece of evidence. And I have to thank Stanton Friedman for that.
Mm-hmm. It was around Lincoln, New Hampshire.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, in Lincoln, New Hampshire. Yes.
So in the other so I read that he talked to Luttrell in 1976. That's what I read.
Yes.
Maybe. Okay.
Yes, he wrote a letter to John Luttrell.
Good. Makes me think now on Calvin Parker. You see, we have Bud Hopkins here, and in the investigation that took place after Calvin Parker's first book in 2018, when you just met him at the International UFO Conference in Phoenix, I think.
Yes, it was.
Yeah, Arizona, and he asked you to perform a hypnosis session with him, and you did a few weeks afterwards at his home. And then it was, and this was published in the second book by Calvin Parker, New Encounters, that was published the following year in 2019. But then at that moment, there were many witnesses appearing, and there are so many people around Pascagoula in Mississippi that had watched the blue light, the blue orb, and seen lights at the same time in the same location. And that's an investigation carried out by Philip Mantle and Irena Scott with all these new witnesses. So there is a parallel between the Batty and Barney Hill case, and there are other parallels, of course, other similarities, but true that when there is an event, sometimes there are many witnesses that not have come forward, but if we look for them, maybe we will find them. And then there are, you mentioned Stanton Friedman and John Luttrell, who found several witnesses of the 1961 event. And in 73 event in Mississippi, there were dozens of witnesses found out thanks to what Philip Mantle did.
Yes, absolutely. Excellent investigation by both Philip Mantle and Irena Scott.
Yeah. Yes, here we have Bud Hopkins. So, in the transcript, in the book transcripts, I'll show the cover in a moment, published in English in 2024 or 23, and then translated into French. They have like 8 or 9 transcripts of hypnosis from 1973 for the Pascal Goula event, and there are several hypnosis sessions by Bud Hopkins, both on Charles Hickson, 85 and 89, and one with Calvin Parker in 93. And so that has been, that was not known before.
Yes.
And Calvin Parker, I don't know if you remember, he explained that in the Katrina hurricane, he lost all his archives. His house was flooded,
Yes.
and he lost his archive. He lost the paper he had with Bud Hopkins contact, because after 93, the Katrina hurricane was in 2004 or 2001. And Bud Hopkins told him after the hypnosis session, your memory will wake up little by little. You will have more and more memories, and then you can write to me, and we'll meet again, we'll talk again, and we'll see what we can do further. But he lost his contact, and that's only Peter Robbins who talked to Philip Mantle, told him there are 3 hypnosis sessions by Bud Hopkins on Charles Hickson, and then Philip Mantle called David Jacobs, because Peter Robbins told him that all the archives, Bud Hopkins archives, were being kept by David Jacobs.
Yes.
Amazing.
Yes. Peter Robbins was Bud Hopkins' assistant.
Yeah.
So he had a close relationship with him.
Yeah. So that's amazing, an amazing investigation. Well, by Philip Mantle, but so many people got involved. Such a beautiful work.
Yes. And I did a hypnosis session with Calvin Parker. I was asked to go there in an attempt to bring out more details about what occurred. But I'm not a person who will lead. Let me back up a little bit. I'm a scholar on hypnosis. I've spent an entire summer at the university reading at the library all of the scientific journal articles on hypnosis. I know a great deal about it. And then after that, I decided that I would become a hypnotherapist because I wanted a different perspective on it as a hypnotherapist, because of the pitfalls of hypnosis, the possibility of confabulation. If you ask questions, if you ask leading questions, particularly if the person is fantasy prone, if the person already thinks they know what happened. So all of that is possible. So then I became a quantum healing hypnosis practitioner later. I never really had a business doing this. It cost me a lot of money to study it, but I worked only with individuals who had a great deal of evidence to support their claims, because I was never going to cause a person to possibly confabulate under hypnosis and then become completely convinced that those memories were real. So I was very, very cautious in hypnotizing Calvin. We reviewed all of the memories that he had. He told me about how he had just begun work with Charlie Hickson. Charlie Hickson was his father's best friend. and he had known him all of his life.
So
So
Nixon here, a
yes,
colorized picture done recently.
yes. So
The site,
Calvin,
the site of the event on the
yes,
Mississippi River.
yes, and Calvin was renting a room from Charlie and his wife and going to work at the shipyard. He'd just begun that job when this event happened. Charlie wanted to go out fishing, and so Calvin went along and had some difficulty at the first place due to mosquitoes and ended up at the Chopper shipyard. Yeah, in Pascagoula. And that's when this craft came down and paralyzed them. And after the entities had come out, there were witnesses to the craft that night. Calvin had a terrible experience, terribly frightening. He was highly traumatized by what had occurred. Of course, Charlie had some trauma, but he had served in World War II. He was a whole lot older. He might have even had experiences prior to this one. I can't say, that's just speculation.
That has been studied by Philip Mantle. I think it's obvious that he had earlier experience even from his childhood.
Yes. And so Calvin, we revisited that event. We got a description of the wharf, the pier where they were fishing, of the inside of the craft and Calvin told me about how when they finally went back to the car after this incident had occurred and the craft had left, his belt buckle stuck to his door handle. I hadn't remembered reading that anywhere. His car, there was a magnetic field around his car.
Mm-hmm.
And the glass on the passenger side was shattered too. And this was his brand new Rambler. What was it called? Yeah, it was a yellow Ramblers, kind of a sporty car. And that happened. And then the rest of the story. And if people don't, they can read the book about it. But or the books, more than one book. But I found Calvin Parker to be a very nice man. He was a good hypnotic subject. He went into a deep trance. He relived the experience. And it was very interesting to me when I went back to the 1993 abduction, how he was in the boat, and he and the boat apparently were lifted into the air by this craft that was inside a cloud, and he could see part of the craft, but it was in a cloud. And then he was taken up into this room with the same woman who had been with him the first time, only had aged, and her appearance was different, and the same strange robotic beings that stood against the wall and were only activated when this woman called to them, and how during this terrible 93 experience, she removed so much blood from Calvin that he believed that he'd had a near-death experience. And then he was ready to kill her, and he attacked her and was beating her head against the wall. And he, in this time frame, he was telling me that she was showing him images of nuclear destruction on this earth, of people starving, of horrible images of nuclear destruction. And finally, she let out a sound that sounded, he said, like the mating call of an alligator. And that activated these entities who were backed up against the wall. So, just different entities than the human types or the gray types, entirely different entities who were unkind to him. And I think that she was giving him a warning that she always wanted him to tell the public about the dangers of nuclear proliferation, and that he had not done so. Of course, he didn't remember that part of 1993, but maybe she had shown him that earlier, but he didn't mention it to me. But his father was also a member of the Nuclear Energy Commission, and Calvin had worked for his father, digging maybe nuclear missile sites. I know that
whose father? Whose father did you say?
Calvin's father.
Okay.
He told me that. So there was a link there. And of course, many experiencers have been shown these horrific images of nuclear war and of the consequences of ignoring the damage that we were doing to the environment.
Yeah. One question. We have on this Pascagoula event, we have, for instance, two major events, 1973, which is well known, and this
Yes.
1993 event 20 years afterwards. And this is not very current in cases. Do you know many cases, several cases, who show two events which have been documented, analyzed with that level of depth?
Yes, I've worked on cases where people have been taken repeatedly throughout their lifetime.
Yeah.
And have some pretty good evidence of some of that. Calvin had these two major events that he remembered. There was definite missing time. He was missing, and his wife was out looking for him. So that was well documented.
Yeah.
But yes, there are other events that like that have happened to certain individuals. Not many.
But what I mean, that is very impressive to see that he saw that women in 73 who practice examination, painful examination, and he recognized a woman 20 years afterwards. What do you think? What do you have to say about that as a researcher on ET abduction? About this women, this humanoid female. What do you want to say? What can you say?
What I want to say is most experiencers have one escort who, and that one entity sees the human being time and time again. So that when it happens, maybe every year or maybe 4 or 5 years, then people become more comfortable with it over time. Of course, that requires some psychotherapy as well, or hypnotherapy by a highly qualified individual to work through any trauma that you experience initially, because most people do have some trauma initially. So, but they do have that same individual who comes, and experiencers tell me that they see that person aging over time. So they appear to be sentient beings. There might also be little drones on the craft with them who are more biomechanical, who turn off just like the ones on the craft turned off up against the wall. They probably were not sentient beings. They were probably robotic. But this one woman is a woman that Calvin saw when he was a little boy. I hypnotized him that time, to a time when he was camping on the shores.
In a wood, she called him from a wood.
Yes, when he was camping with Charlie Hickson and his family and his father. Yes. And then, in 1993, 1973, and then in 1993 as well. So 4 times in Calvin's life that he recalled. There might be other times that he didn't recall.
Yeah, thank you. What do you say about Bud Hopkins? Since you are a major investigator on all these things, Kathleen, what is Kathleen Marden's word on Mr. Bud Hopkins, who is considered really as one of the pioneer in abduction studies? Here down, we see him with Calvin and another experiencer whom you know, Debbie
Debbie Cobble is her
Debbie
real
Cobble.
name.
Debbie
Yes.
Cobble.
And
it is in 93, I guess, when Bud Hopkins did the hypnosis in 1993.
it could possibly be. It might have been a conference. I'm not certain. But I have to say I admire Bud Hopkins. He used scientific investigation, or science in his investigations, I should say. He worked on social research with Dr. Don C. Derry, a professor at McGill University. And I really like these social studies. That's where my area of expertise lies. And so I also worked on a study with Dr. Don Derry through the Mutual UFO Network when I was the director of the experiencer research team. Yes. So I admire the work that Bud did. He was a pioneer. He was new. He was exploring. And I sort of picked up from where Bud left off and began my research. Bud had been the director of abduction research for the Mutual UFO Network at one time as well.
I didn't know that.
Yes. And so I knew Bud. I'd visited his home. He even hypnotized me. I wanted to learn his technique, the technique that he used. I was also a hypnotherapist at that time when I asked him to hypnotize me. So he was very gracious, very kind, and I gained a lot of insight into the abduction field through Bud.
Yeah, thank you. At the end, in one of the chapters of your book, Experiencer, you give account of people being harassed. How Batty and Barney Hill have been harassed by when they came public. Also, Travis Walton, and you talk about Linda Cortill as well, who has been harassed. And that's a case that was investigated by Bud Hopkins, Linda Cortill case.
Yes. There are, in the United States, some vocal disinformants. A lot of my colleagues call them debunkers. They're not real skeptics. They're also called pseudo-skeptics because they tend to claim that they're scientific in their investigations and that the investigators are not being scientific. When, if you really look at it, just the opposite is true. These debunkers use false information. And that information tends to be passed down among scientists or mainstream scientists, because they believe that these people are being scientific and accurate when they are not. Let me give you an example. Philip Klass stated that, or wrote actually, that Betty and Barney had had this encounter with a light in the sky that they thought was a UFO, and that Barney had become frightened about this. So he decided to turn off onto narrow, winding roads to escape this craft. And then they returned home 2 hours later than anticipated. Betty had some dreams, and then Barney decided that her dreams were real. None of this is accurate. But Carl Sagan picked those words up that Philip Klass had stated. And then a professor at Harvard University picked those up. And they wrote those false statements in their articles and books. So it's very unfortunate that people like Philip Klass and his cohorts and these younger people who tend to be very nasty are engaged in this. And I have to say that I'm very pleased that we are now having a congressional investigation of UAPs in this country, and that at this point, 4 tranches of evidence from the Department of Defense, from the Pentagon, have been released to the public. Now, a lot of them are documents from the past that have been dismissed as being phony by these skeptics. And so I was happy to see this. There are also a lot of videos of alleged UFOs, or you might say UFOs because they're unidentified and they have not been identified. They appeal to the general public, I guess. But I am happy that these documents have been released and that Congress is involved and that the Congressional Committee, the Oversight Committee on UAPs, is concerned about this kind of harassment that is taking place. And I think that that's very important because I was recently I spoke at the Roswell UFO Festival this year. Yeah. And there were these young, nasty people who were there harassing some speakers. I'm not going to say who they were, but harassing speakers while they were speaking out on the sidewalk and at their vendor tables. We had security guards who finally ended it and ousted these very nasty individuals who shouldn't be there and shouldn't have been there as long as they were. But we're encountering this kind of thing, and also even more deception than had previously been disseminated by Philip Klass and his understudies.
Impressive, very, very concerning reality. If it is even worse today than it was in the 70s, the situation is really serious, and we really need a true, a genuine disclosure by, as you say, the Pentagon or the Congress. But
one of these people was harassed in 2023 and then spent 6 days in the hospital with symptoms of anthrax. He was being treated for anthrax.
Okay, what did you say there precisely about the Hill experience? Let me read a few words, and we'll have to close because we are already more than 1 hour. It's amazing. We did not.
Time flies.
We'll talk about your book, what you do when you think you're abducted. Another moment because we don't have much time. About the Hill experience.
Please show that. Please show. This is forbidden knowledge. Let's bring up the alien. Do you want to do extraterrestrial contact? What to do when you've been abducted?
Yeah, the cover I saw the cover a while ago.
Yeah, because that's a very important book for people who are interested in learning more about alien abduction and what to do, where to turn to, what the characteristics are for therapists, for people who are interested, and also for people who are having this happen in their lives. Right there at the bottom, extraterrestrial contact. And you've published that in French.
Yeah, the cover on the book, I put it at the end. It is a different entirely different cover. It was in May.
There it is.
Yeah,
Yes.
May 2023. What I wanted to ask you about in this book is the techniques you offer to the people who in order to coping strategy and resistant techniques, people who want to stop the experience of contact experience or alien abduction experience, because these words are difficult to understand sometimes. What is a contact? What is abduction? Are there different things, etc.? What people wonder from your experience. Okay, so how do you introduce the meaning, the purpose of this chapter, coping strategy, resistance technique? Because you give like 12 techniques there. It's amazing. It's impressive to read that. It is a help you offer, support you're offering to the experiencer, right?
Yes, absolutely. So many people would just want it to stop. They don't want this to continue in their lives. And that's part of the reason that some people come to the Mutual UFO Network and speak to members of the Experiencer Research Team. That's what it was called when I was the director, but it's now the Experiencer Resource Team. But you can, if you're looking for primary support at the very beginning, then you speak to this person. A lot of people have never had the opportunity to speak to someone without ridicule. But these people are highly knowledgeable about alien abduction, ET contact, and they are there to listen without ridiculing. And that's very important. It's the first step to healing. Of course, if you're experiencing trauma, it's important to receive therapy after that. MUFON doesn't pay for that. You have to go there yourself. But in this book, we talk about how to investigate your own abductions. Maddie Tobias, a psychotherapist, psychiatric nurse who treated combat veterans who had PTSD, talks about what to do. Anne Castle, who she was a psychologist. She worked at a psychiatric hospital. She then went into the IT industry, but and now she's retired. She is psychic, and she wrote about the changes that take place in the lives of experiencers, how you become more psychic, what to recognize as you're changing as an experiencer. And then Denise Stoner wrote about how to know if it's a UFO experience with non-human entities, possibly from of extraterrestrial origin, or it is an interdimensional entity, positive or negative, angels or demons, that kind of thing. And also the paranormal overlay, such as poltergeist activities, such as electromagnetic anomalies in your home after an experience, that kind of thing. So Denise specializes in that. Orbs, intelligent orbs too. But as we move further to people who want it to end, I wrote a quite lengthy part on calling upon a higher power.
Yeah, call upon a higher power, raise your consciousness, request protection, be assertive, sever your contract, fascinating, employ physical violence, use a LED flashlight, avoid EA contact, use thought, create holographic image of yourself, make a thought screen helmet. Fascinating.
Yes. All different suggestions that people might want to try. I can't guarantee that they're going to be successful, but it's better than nothing.
Can you say something about, what is the importance to you, in a short word, higher power, ask for protection, request protection, raise your consciousness? How do you summarize this aspect, this tool, this defense against predation, negative aliens, for instance, predation?
Yes. Well, what I have suggested is that people who are having negative contact are having it because of what the activities in their own lives or the conditions of their bodies. Maybe they're ill and they have a long-term illness and they're suffering greatly. Maybe they drink heavily. Alcoholics tend to have a problem with this. Maybe they're using opioids, and opium addicts or opioid addicts tend to have a problem with this. Maybe they're suffering from clinical depression and they're not being treated. So they're feeling down and not good all of the time. These negative entities, interdimensional entities, can easily attach to these people. They seek them out, they attach to them, and then they make them sicker than they already were. They, in a sense, suck the life out of them. And it's very important for people to seek help with this, to raise their vibrational frequency, to stop alcoholism, to stop taking these opioids if possible, of being treated for depression, of being treated for long-term pain or illness if people are suffering greatly. Because in order to raise your vibration to the point where these entities no longer want to engage with you, you have to become a happy person.
So you're talking more about attachment entities, but we are not focused here specifically on what we call alien abduction with greys or mantids. Is something maybe different. That's what you mean?
Yes, with greys and mantids, you can ask them for a reprieve. You can tell them that you want to end your contract with them.
Sever your contract.
Yes, sever your contract. Because when you say, I don't want to be taken anymore, leave me alone, they'll say, but you made an agreement before you were born. And you say, well, I don't want to abide by that agreement. You're frightening me. And fear is the thing that is most powerful in the lives of people who have not had a lot of abductions. And it's extraordinarily important to overcome that sense of fear, that fight or flight response, because fear colors our perception of what has occurred. And most people, if they go through therapy, discover that it wasn't as bad as they thought it was.
So we are here on 20th of July. We are conducted an interview in English. It will be put in with subtitle in French. So I'm thinking of the people who are still suffering these experiences with abuse. So you say, request protection, be assertive, sever your contract. So is that really an advice you're giving to people who think they have one kind of negative experience they want to close? What do you say about being assertive? As you say, not being manipulated by fear, dominated by fear, be assertive, sever your contract. What is your direct advice to the people who will speak French, understand the subtitle in French or audio French, if I manage to do that? What is your word, Kathleen?
Well, it takes time to work on yourself, to condition yourself to overcome this fear. And it's, hypnosis or therapy to overcome that fear. But then when you're taken, you can learn to, instead of having that fight or flight response, project love toward them. And they will react differently. You have transformed spiritually and now you can move forward having greater contact, understanding through them, more conversation. They might show you more. But if you want it to end at that point, then you could communicate to them, either give me a break, give me a reprieve, I don't want to be taken as often, or I want to sever this agreement. I don't want to see you again. I don't want you to take me. I don't want you to take my family. I don't want you to take my children. Intergenerational contact. And, a lot of people are not pleased that there is this intervention in their lives, and they feel terrible when their children are taken as well. And so, even though when they're young children, they tend to play on the craft and receive a lot of positive feedback as they're learning from these non-humans. But still, you're not aware that you've given permission, and you certainly haven't given them permission to take your children.
And they may implant this conviction not only in your flesh, but in your mind, in your emotional body, that you gave this permission, that you signed this contract. But there is no any proof of that.
No, there is no proof. They want you to believe that before you were born, you participated in this contract.
David Jacobs says, maybe, I know he's being criticized by many, but he said that that's one form of manipulation to the people who are abducted, to believe that they belong to a higher program for humankind, and they are very privileged to be part on this program. It's a privilege, even if there is something concerning, something painful sometimes. But it's coming that a little price paying for a high privilege that many would be jealous, would be envious to you. You are privileged part of humankind. That was they convinced people about.
Well, and that was one of
that to him. That's a huge deception. That's the instrument for terrible deception.
I know that he believed that it was a deception, but I look at it a little bit differently. And I had a conversation with him about the differences between what I have discovered and what he found. My discoveries were not by working directly with experiencers necessarily, but through the studies that I have participated in as a researcher. And this study, through the Mutual UFO Network of 516 abductees and experiencers that I worked on with a team from the Mutual UFO Network and with a PhD academic, Dr. Don C. Donderi, also a PhD psychologist, Michael Austin Melton, and another man who had a PhD as well. We asked the question, if you could make this stop today, would you want to end your experiences? And among our experiencers overall, that 516, 71% said, no, I don't want to end this. And among those who were abducted, Dr. Donderi administered a test, the American Personality Inventory, to determine who had the characteristics of UFO abduction syndrome. Among that special group, 75% said they wanted to continue their experiences. So these are scientific statistics.
Yeah, but that's precisely how David Jacobs interprets all of that. To him, this kind of statistics is not an evidence that the program is positive or helpful. It's evidence of the contrary, that people are highly being manipulated mentally, psychologically, in a very sophisticated engineering methodology and technology that to convince people to have the conviction that it's good and that they enjoy that it's good, and that's great.
Well, yes, and Bud Hopkins said the
it's not
same.
because someone feels good, that is good. People like cigarette. They are happy and they suffer if you want to make them stop or leave alcohol, etc.
Okay, but let me continue.
That's a big issue.
Let me continue with what we learned to add to that. We had open-ended questions about what was communicated to them by these non-humans. And these non-humans told them things like, we are here because your spiritual development is out of balance with your technological progress. And when we see that occurring, it could lead to the disintegration of the species. And so when you think of that, and their warnings about nuclear weapons, you go back to the beginning of these experiences when they were showing up in great numbers. And this started when we were detonated nuclear weapons. They started taking the first experiencers when they were detonating nuclear weapons. So I think that there's far more to this. It's not as negative as David Jacobs believes, but that's what we learned through our research.
I understand. That's a big issue because we could elaborate much on all of that. But thank you for your sincerity, for all your work. Severe contract, employ physical violence, use LED flashlight. What is that, Kathleen?
Denise,
I read it. You don't understand LED flashlight.
Denise Stoner came up with that idea that you should keep flashlights in bed with you. You know, the new LED flashlights.
Yeah.
Instead of the old incandescent bulbs, you use LED flashlights, and you just have it there to shine it into their eyes. Have it very, very brilliant flashlights to shine into their eyes. Denise is an experiencer, and she discovered that worked when she did it.
That's amazing. If you can could do a tutorial, on the ERT experiencer website, how to use a LED to flash into big black gray eyes.
Yes, just grab your flashlight and turn it on and flash it into their eyes. You might even use the strobe light on it. That will drive them crazy.
I remember reading either in Bud Hopkins' book or in David Jacobs' first book saying that when you say avoid eye contact, I think it's David Jacobs explained that when the gray put their eye very close to the experiencer or to the victim, means they take control of the optic nerve that connects the eye with all the sector of the brain. And so this optic nerve, they take control of the brain through the eye.
Mm-hmm.
So welcome
that light
welcome LED. Welcome LED. If you can prevent that.
Yes, you can, if you do that before they're able to take control of your brain and your body.
Avoid eye contact.
Pardon me?
You say one advice is avoid eye contact with.
Yes, avoid eye contact. Yes.
Because eye contact is a form of control.
Yes.
Okay, so people who listen to that, don't be afraid. Don't be dominated by fear. On the contrary, say we are going to fight and win. Be positive, be assertive. That's it.
Yes. Yeah. And I also want to mention that these non-humans have healed experiencers who were suffering from disease. And they're later in their lives, they've been taken time and time again throughout their lifetime. They've asked for help and they've received it.
Yeah, I had an interview with Preston Dennett, one of, I think, the first on this channel, GlobalETs,
Yes,
and
he's a friend.
yeah, Preston Dennett, and he has many accounts of healing with positive ETs, or obviously, or maybe even grays, whatever. But it is true. It is true. Whatever it means. There are healings, many cases. Totally
Yes.
incredible cases, even of a human being, someone humanoid. A man looks like a human being. He gets into a hospital when the person is really ill. He gets into the room with taking a dress of a doctor, and in 1 hour afterwards, the person is healed. But it was not a doctor from the hospital, and it happened in a few hours. It was healed in a few hours. Something completely miraculous, let us say,
Yes,
to the contemporary standard.
that does happen. And one of my extraordinarily important cases that I had investigated over a period of many years was a man who had come down with cancer. And he began to ask the ETs for healing. And there was actually an orb caught on camera coming into his bedroom, flying across the room and entering his body. And it healed him. And there's medical evidence for that.
Yeah, thank you, Kathleen. Kathleen, I interviewed Colm Kelleher, James Lakatsky, and George Knapp on their book Skinwalker at the Pentagon. And in
Yes.
this book, it is referred a very malevolent, negative orb, which are the blue orbs, which may cause injury, illnesses, very serious thing. It has been investigated with the Bigelow Foundation, with the program AUSAP, and
I
MUFON
read that.
has taken part of the AUSAP giving access to the MUFON archives and cases. But so there are very negative orbs, but there may be very positive orbs. There may be
Yes.
negative abduction and positive contact. That's the complexity of all these ET issues. Then.
Yes. And I have read their book. It's a very, very good book. And what I noted was that they had been out to the Skinwalker Ranch, which is noted for negative activity. When they were there, they said that they were not frightened, but then suddenly they had this overpowering sensation of fear. And I think that negative entity that they call a hitchhiker attached to them at that point and followed them to their homes, and then were in their homes frightening their families, waking them up in the middle of the night, waking up their children, and then we're moving on to other family members and neighbors even. So that's different from the healing orbs completely. But that's one you want to stay away from. I'd stay as far away from Skinwalker Ranch as I possibly could.
I would not go. Never. Thank you. It's almost 2 hours, Kathleen. It's incredible. Talking to you is like, what I told you in the first time, it's like being on a little boat on a quiet lake. Time goes by and talking about very serious issues, but it's so pleasant to listen to you.
Well, thank you. It flew for me as well. I really enjoy talking about this and our conversation that we had today.
Thank you. I will not read about the harassment suffered by Batty and Barney Hill because we already said a lot. Travis Walton too, and about Mrs. Linda Cortill was threatened too. She was harassed,
Yes.
pretty much. Do you know that I was privileged to write to get a message from Mrs. Linda Napolitano? We may reveal her name now.
Yes. She's recently deceased.
Yeah, I
She
wrote
died,
to her.
yeah.
I wrote to her like 3 years ago or 4 years ago. I told her that I had read Bud Hopkins' book, that I had talked to David Jacobs, that I translated "Walking Among Us" by David Jacobs. The different things. And I had gone to New York. It is true. I have gone 3 times to New York previously. I didn't know about this case in the 90s and beginning of the 2000, but I did not study UFO things at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And she told me, if you come back to New York, to Manhattan, tell me, I will show you, I will bring you to the Brooklyn Bridge and to the place where all of that happened. I still have a message on Messenger.
Mm-hmm.
And I learned like 2 years ago that she passed away. I was so sad.
Yes, yeah,
Said,
very sad.
I should have
I knew her.
gone. I should have, you knew her.
Yes. I used to go to a gathering in Newport, Rhode Island. This was a mansion on the water, and it was a gathering of scientists, ufologists, and experiencers of ET contact. We met once a year. Bud used to go there. John Mack went there.
This is Bud Hopkins who were organizing that.
No, Bud wasn't organizing it. There was a woman who lived at that mansion who was organizing all of this. But Bud was invited to go
because
to this.
Bud Hopkins would go to Newport on holidays. He had a house there, I think.
Yes. That's where I used to go to. And that's how I met Linda Napolitano for the first time. And every year I would see her and we would converse. So I learned a lot and I helped her a lot too. She thanked me for the support that I gave her.
Wow, that's amazing. It would be good to hear you about it another time or read something. What an amazing account. Thanks to Bud Hopkins, we have her account, and it's so impressive. So such a big story.
Yes.
So, yes, he was. But she was harassed as well. So you refer. We close here. You refer readings and website. Your website, the MUFON UFO Network website, the National UFO Reporting Center as important new fork for resources. Journal of Abnormal Abduction Research. I try to get into it. ufocorp.com. It does not open the Journal of Abnormal Abduction Research. It's not available.
Okay.
I don't know why. The Free Foundation, UFO Casebook, David Jacobs' website, ufoabduction.com. Readings, your book, Alien Abduction Files by Kathleen MARDEN and Dennis Stoner. The Dual Soul Connection by Susie Hansen. What is that book, Kathleen?
That is very interesting. Dr. Rudy Shield, who is an astrophysicist at Harvard, gave some commentary on her book, The Dual Soul Connection. And
by Susie Hansen.
She's an experiencer from New Zealand. I've met her as well. And she is one of those experiencers who is at a very high level, that she has been on craft. She's had tours of the craft. They've shown her their technology, how they live, how they teach children, all sorts of things. And she believes that she has a dual soul connection, that before she was born, they inserted their consciousness into her body. So she has a human soul and also her soul.
Impressive.
Oh, that ET soul, I should say.
So many things. The books by Fire in the Sky by Travis Walton, of course. I have your picture with Travis Walton in 2018, together with Kevin Parker too, at the International UFO Conference. So, a word on Travis Walton? What do you say? A short word.
You know, there is so much evidence in the Travis Walton case.
Why did he never undergo hypnosis, according to you? It's a very mysterious thing.
He underwent hypnosis with Dr. James Harder.
Okay, but only once, very, very, very little.
Yes, he did. I don't know if he's undergone further hypnosis, but I know that he's overcome his fear at this point.
I think he said that he didn't want to undergo hypnosis because he wanted only to be focused on his conscience recording. You don't want to be influenced by anything else.
Well, for good reason, probably, because the debunkers would simply say that all of this was the result of hypnosis. The debunkers have thoroughly taken every aspect of what happened to Travis Walton and sort of reshaped it, rewritten it, and inserted false information. They are persistent in their harassment and their debunking of Travis.
Yeah, there's a strong harassment against him. What about his book? What is Kathleen MARDEN word on Fire in the Sky?
I think that his book, Fire in the Sky, was an excellent read. I highly recommend it.
Yeah, it's a big, large book. How do you explain that this man is one of the most consistent witnesses in abduction studies? Because he's a witness since the time it was 75.
Yes,
he didn't stop giving a conference. How do you explain this consistency, this persistency, this resilience, let us say?
Well, he never intended to go forward, but he was missing, and the police suspected foul play, and it was in the news, and so it was a big thing, and the media was there before he was even returned, and then he fled from the media. We went to his brother's house in Phoenix, and that's when he had some medical care and somebody who wanted to hypnotize him, but he wasn't willing at that point. And then that person decided to collaborate with a debunker who decided to say that the marks on Travis's arms were probably from needle marks and not something that he'd gotten working in the woods or on board a craft. You know, you can read all about this in my book with Stanton Friedman, Fact, Fiction, and Flying Saucers.
Oh, yeah, yes, I remember that.
It's all about how Travis was mistreated and how his story was changed, yes, by these skeptics, pseudo-skeptics, who pretended to be scientists, who wanted to manipulate his case so that the public would think that he was lying.
He has been very brave, right, for all these through these decades, not to get crazy, not to get depressive.
He has been very brave to go to conferences, but conferences are mostly attended by people who are interested in the subject. They might have had their own experiences, or they're interested in hearing, you know, Travis's case. They believe it, that it really did happen. You know, so he didn't do many radio shows over the years on it for the general public, because then that could contribute. I think his reason was, I know he hasn't told me this, but I think that it's because he would receive more criticism from the general public.
But he gave many lectures.
Yes, he's been given many lectures over the years.
Philip Mantle asked him to allow him to publish his book and to translate it in Spanish and in French, but it's difficult to access him. It's difficult.
Yes, he doesn't want anyone to know his email address or his telephone number. I don't even know it.
Intruders by Bud Hopkins, Witness by Bud Hopkins. Wow. And books by Raymond Fowler. Raymond Fowler was on the first investigators in alien abduction, right?
He was, yes, he was absolutely one of the first. And he wrote about the Betty Andreasson case that took place in Massachusetts, and also about
abduction.
The Allagash abductions as well,
which took place in
the Allagash region of Maine.
In Maine, in the north part.
Yes.
Did you know him, Raymond Fowler? Because he He's
I
another
knew
generation.
of him. I know the people who were abducted in that case, but I've talked to them more than to Raymond Fowler.
Okay. Coronado by Yvonne Smith. We have a Zero in France, Zero France. Yvonne Smith created the Zero. What do you say about Yvonne Smith as an investigator?
Yvonne isn't really an investigator.
No.
She is more of a support person and a hypnotherapist, with offering for many, many years treatment to experiencers and abductees. And Bud Hopkins used to refer people to Yvonne. John Mack used to refer people to Yvonne. And now I refer people to Yvonne because I'm retired from doing any hypnosis or support for abduction experiencers. Yvonne I have the utmost respect for her work. She's excellent in what she does.
Is it quantum healing hypnosis technique, or is it another technique?
She uses a technique that she's developed over many years, and it includes treatment for post-traumatic stress disorder, for in treatment of anxiety and trauma. And she does not ask leading questions. She's an excellent, highly experienced hypnotherapist.
Good. I wanted to read her book Coronado for a long time as well.
Yeah, it's about her hypnosis sessions with people. She was at the conference herself, a UFO conference where there was a group abduction. And so she wrote about this.
Okay, so thank you very much. Wait, Kathleen, I'm going to read one praise by Peter Robbins, your friend Peter Robbins, whom I will interview next week.
Oh, good.
Peter, yes. There's a surprise to you. I wanted to say that to you. Mm-hmm. He knows that I had an interview with you today. It was very happy for me. And
Thank you.
Yeah, he agreed. It is several months, but we didn't find the appropriate, and it's next Monday. I'm very touched. I'm very impressed at it. It's a wonderful person. I met him in person in England at a UFO conference in 2023. Mm-hmm. Yeah, he was there in Hull, Yorkshire. He was a guest speaker, of course.
Yes.
And yes. I was fortunate to talk to him. I was at the same hotel with him, with all the speakers. I was just visiting from France, but I was invited in the hotel together with all the speakers.
Yes.
Talking with Peter Robbins. I bought his DVD on the James Forrester.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I have that DVD as well.
Very impressive work as well. So
yes, he does very good work.
So meaningful. Peter Robbins on Kathleen Marden's work. Once again, author and investigator Kathleen Marden has made a remarkable contribution to the world of serious UFO literature. The wealth of practical, well-documented information contained in Extraterrestrial Contact, What to Do When You Have Been Abducted, will be invaluable to experiencers and abductees, as well as to educators, mental health professionals, and serious students of ufology worldwide. Now, Richard Dolan, historian, UFO researcher. Kathleen Marden is not only the niece of Batty and Barney Hill, but is also one of the leading UFO researchers of our time. Her collaboration with the legendary researcher Stanton Friedman has resulted in the definitive work on the most important UFO abduction case of the 20th century. People here don't know much Richard Dolan. I watched his radio Richard Dolan disclosure.
Mhm.
It's very rich.
Yes, he's a very prominent researcher. I admire his work.
I believe, of course. Linton Moulton Ho. It is a difficult path to report news from the tangled web of government denial policies about non-human interactions with this planet. But ultimately, the official phony denials can't last forever in the face of so many first-hand human experiences and testimonies since the historic 1961 Batty and Barney Hill encounter with non-humans in New Hampshire that left physical residue of dress stains, scuffed shoe tops, and an odd pattern of shiny circles on top of their car's trunk. Betty's niece, Kathleen MARDEN, and her co-author, Dennis Stoner, now add from their alien abduction files more meticulously investigated high strangeness with non-human entities in the lives of two American families that have been physically, mentally, and spiritually affected, as so many thousands of other families have been for more than 50 years. Each new voice adds pressure to the question, when will Earth's life be publicly introduced to other cosmic life? Linda Moulton Ho, Emmy Award-winning journalist, author, reporter, editor-in-chief of earthfiles.com. Do you talk to Mrs. Linda Moulton Ho sometimes?
I used to quite a lot. She gave me a lot of assistance when I wrote Captured. She was one of the people who vetted my work, and Dr. Bruce Maccabee did as well, and then Stanton Friedman. I was very concerned about accuracy, so I spoke with her a lot. I gave her some of recordings from the Hill hypnosis tapes, which she played on her radio show back then, and I see her at conferences when we're speaking at the same conferences as well.
Personally, I admire her a lot. She has been criticized in the recent years. To me, she is one of the most amazing person in the UFO studies, not only among women, but on the whole, just like you and Stanton Friedman and Richard Dolan and others. She is a very, very important researcher, and I thought the humanity will pay tribute to her when we get
Absolutely.
a real disclosure. People who have laughed at her will cry, will be really sorry.
Yes, I have nothing but respect for Linda.
Yes, what did I want to? I wanted to say something else. Anyway, thank you very much, Kathleen. So I will have this interview with Peter Robbins. I will tell him how I was fortunate to spend more than 2 hours with Kathleen. People in France are privileged. People, my friend, may understand that you are very privileged to have listened to Kathleen MARDEN for this long time. So take care of yourself. So I let you know when it is. I usually put two videos, one in English and one in French. You see, so because it's important. Because it's English speaking, people who are English speaking may have access, and then another one with a French cover and subtitles. But great. And no, the question: how was the UFO festival in Roswell? Well, that was my question with Donald Schmidt, and I saw the list of skippers, Mark D'Antonio, and several prominent researchers.
Yes, Ben Hansen was another. We had some prominent speakers, Tom
Reed.
Tom Reed and Travis Walton.
Travis Walton was there.
Yes,
I didn't
he's there
know.
speaking as well. And we attracted about 7,500 people to the museum that weekend. So we had a nice crowd. I gave 3 lectures and was on a panel, and the room was packed full every time, people standing in the back on the sidelines. So it was well attended. And also it was great to be able to interact with the people who came to the conference.
Oh, yes. And what about Donald Schmidt? How was it? How is he?
Oh, Don Schmidt, I have also have a great deal of respect and admiration for him. He was working hard. He's on the board of directors of the museum. And also he's a prolific writer of books. He had what looked like a new book on his table and delivers wonderful lectures.
Of course.
As well. He has a lot of passion when he speaks, and that's so important. So he's an excellent speaker.
Yeah. Thank you. You know, I got translated Witness to Roswell in November 2024.
Oh, did you?
Yes, but until here there is like silence. Nobody knows, as if there is a silencing campaign. When you call about harassment, I will tell you another circumstance.
Well, that's not Don's. That is published by New Page Books, and New Page Books controls the rights to that book, not Don. It's New Page Books.
Yeah, I got
foreign acquisitions.
Yeah, it is no New Page book now. It is Red Wheel Weiser.
Wheel Weiser is the printer.
Yeah.
But New Page Books is still there. It's just a subsidiary.
But
of New Page Books.
I got to Red Wheel Weiser and the agent in Paris. They have an agent now. So I paid to the publisher a big money, can't tell. But here, people don't know the major author. People don't know the name of Donald Schmidt, the name of Richard Dolan, hardly the name of Stanton Friedman. Kathleen MARDEN is not so famous, you see, because there is not an action to let international researchers be known internationally, because people don't speak English, don't make the effort. And there is nobody doing what I've been doing, you see.
Well, I've lectured in several European countries, so people should know me.
Yeah, but it's not relayed, and your speeches are not being translated. There's a lot of things. Of course, there are some people who know you, of course, who know Donald Schmidt. But imagine, Witness to Roswell. Everybody interested in UFO studies knows that this is the book on Roswell, the definitive book. And this book, I don't say it does not sell at all, but it is not advertised as it should be. Also, I've done quite on my part. But we have to be patient, expecting. So your example, your contribution. I interviewed Tom Carey. You see, the people will realize that we need international speakers, international interviews, and
yes. And Tom Carey was the co-author of Witness to Roswell.
I will send you the interview I had with him. Sincerely, it's beautiful piece, just like we had a very beautiful time with you, 2 hours. But the interview with Tom Carey on Roswell, I tell you, there is never be anything like that in France. There will be never anything like that. And I'm sure that even in England, in America, there are things that have been raised because I've asked him questions about things that we found in his book, The Children of Roswell, you see. In The Children of Roswell that was published, not only that, of course, he explained all the thing about the archaeologists. Everybody talks about the archaeologists around Roswell, but who knows about it? Who knows? Tom Carey knows. and his account is so beautiful, so extraordinary. I understood things listening to him. Also, I had read Witness to Roswell several times since 2015. But for instance, Children on Roswell, written in 2016, there are witnesses who were not known in 2007, 2009, when Witness to Roswell was published, and very interesting witnesses.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Yes.
and you have to listen. It's amazing interview, and I putting it on Facebook every 2 weeks. You see, and little by little the views are raising. But I'm not. I'm happy. I'm not discouraged at all. And seeing the generosity from people like you and other, it's a lot of support and strength we're getting.
Mm-hmm.
And there will be answer. People will react. Thanks to you, thanks to Tom Carey, and thanks to Donald when he pops up.
There are several older people who are dedicated researchers who have devoted a very long period of time to this research, to finding answers.
And hopefully there will be younger ones, a new generation. Hopefully.
I hope so. I hope so. But it's a lot of work. You have to go to archival collections. You have to read those archives. You have to do research into information as a result of Freedom of Information Act requests.
If I had the resource, I would like to go to Philadelphia and spend at least, let's say, 2 weeks, to do something on, because I don't know, or I wanted to write to them. I said, what are you doing with Bud Hopkins archive, with David Jacob? Are you digitizing? Is there a documentalist giving a report there? What are you doing? Are there UFO investigators coming? Do you have articles? It's amazing. Bud Hopkins archives, nobody talks about it.
Mm-hmm.
If you know anyone, just send some sincere researcher there.
Well, I don't even know if it is open to the public yet. I think that when it's open to the public, you're going to hear a lot more about it.
Yeah.
But it takes a long time to put that archival collection together.
Yeah.
And prepare it for public viewing.
But I told David Mahler to get in contact with him. I think he will ask them what they're doing, or he may send someone to help them. I don't. Anyway, thank you very much, Kathleen.
You're welcome. Nice to talk to you again. You take care now.
I write to you soon.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Good afternoon, Kathleen. Thank you.
You too. Let's see.